It's done. Served her yesterday. I got up and left the home, getting some food in the meantime while she was leaving for work. I rented a vehicle, then returned home and changed the locks. My buddy and her husband came over, bringing a friend with him, and we packed up her belongings. We piled up our bedroom furniture, which I had given her as a wedding present, my sofa, my dining table, and everything else she had soiled. I put it in storage. Put all of her clothing in trash bags. I was about to mix her soiled clothing with the clean ones, but my buddy wouldn't allow me. We finished just after 11 a.m. I went to her workplace at lunchtime and purchased flowers and chocolates. I walked in and gave her the flowers and sweets, as well as a huge hug and kiss. Her employees were doing the "oh, that's so lovely" thing as she was all grins and blushes. I told her that I would love to take her to lunch, but that I needed to go have a checkup on my leg, but that I didn't want to make arrangements for the night because I wanted to give her a night to remember. I kissed her farewell and began walking away. I'm going to start calling her GM, Tom, or FT at this point. I spotted her boss as I was leaving and gave him a huge grin and said, "Hey Tom, how are you?" I waved goodbye and walked away. Then I went to get some food. At 2 p.m., a deputy would arrive at my wife's workplace to serve her. I was standing in front of FT home around 2 p.m. I emailed him the photo I shot the day they were captured. I also snapped a picture in front of his home and sent it to him. Mrs. FT answered the door when I knocked. She knows a little bit about me from parties and events at my wife's workplace. I informed her that my wife and her husband had an affair. She wasn't convinced. I showed her the first photo I took, as well as a selfie they took when my wife was giving him a blowjob on my sofa, and then she smacked me. I simply stood there and she burst into tears. I sent her a thumb drive with all I had on my wife and her husband. I told her my wife was cheating on me with many guys and that I needed to get tested for STD. I handed her my lawyer's business card and my phone number. Then she inquired as to why I was torturing her, and to be honest, I'm not sure why I did it. I did a lot of damage to her. I feel like the greatest jerk for doing that. I told her she had a right to know and felt like a jerk for answering her. My phone began blowing up as I was walking away. I didn't return any phone calls or messages. I just returned home. I altered my Facebook status to divorce when I got home. I began reading my wife's messages. "What on earth is this? What exactly are you doing? That nonsense." I responded to her message by telling her she may come to the home at 7 p.m. and not a minute before to grab her things. FT apparently didn't tell her what I did immediately away since, I'm sure, he was dealing with his own issues at the time. But my wife texted me a few minutes later. Me for informing Mrs. FT. So he did inform her. My friend, who was covering for my wife, whom I'll name Amber, began contacting me. So I responded. With "How long have you suspected my wife and FT of having an affair? Please do not deceive me." And she confirmed my suspicions. The whole time. Since long before my wife and I met. The whole time. I've been the supporting actor the whole time. My whole marriage is a horrible farce. That's a tough thing to take, let me tell you. I questioned why she hadn't told me. She said it was because they expected me to go, get aggressive and so on. I told her she should know better than that. She said she kept it a secret since she was a friend of hers. How about me? Was it I? If I knew her spouse was cheating, wouldn't she want me to notify her? Isn't it my responsibility as a friend to inform her of anything she should be aware of? She agreed. So I hung up and emailed her images of her and her husband that my wife had taken, as well as my lawyer's phone number, saying that my lawyer knows all I know. Then I informed her she could never contact me again. My wife arrived at the home at 4 p.m. and discovered the locks. She began shouting and knocking on the door. I didn't respond. She tried phoning one more. I switched off my phone's ringer. She then smashed a window and fled. At about 7 p.m., 2 deputies parked in front of the house. One of them was one of the persons that assisted me in moving my belongings earlier. His wife, as well as a friend, arrived. When 7 p.m. rolled around, my wife arrived. She seemed to be somewhat quiet. I'm quite sure she and Amber had gotten into it at that point. I handed her her clothing, the storage key and address, as well as my lawyer's business card. I told her that any communication with me would be done via her. My wife began with the "I love you" nonsense. We can work it out, she's sorry, she loves me, a mistake, she doesn't love them, it didn't mean anything. I just pointed to my lawyer's business card. She said that it was her home as well, and that I couldn't throw her out. I informed her that it was my house and that she had practically screwed herself out of it. This is when she became quite vocal. All of the I love yous became yous and I hate yous. The cops switched on their lights, and neighbors gathered to see the train disaster. Throughout this, I stayed somewhat cool and kept my hands by my sides. She continued to yell at me. I believe she had been drinking. She began to weep since she had nowhere to go, and when I assured her that I didn't care. So, I discovered a new talent in my wife. She can throw right. He gave me a nose and a thick lip. I didn't move 1 inch. I simply stood there and watched as she did it. She attempted to scratch my face. She was restrained by the deputies. I refused to file charges. I told them to just make her go. They submitted an incident report, which allowed me to get a TRO. In fact, I'm pleased she did. When she left, I walked back in, and while I was cleaning myself up, all the I should have been feeling for the prior 2 months began to hit me. Right now, I'm completely fatigued. I expected to feel better after everything was all said and done. I don't think so. I'm feeling terrible. I'm not one to weep easily, but I've been doing a lot of it since yesterday night. My phone has around 600 unanswered messages and phone calls, and the number is climbing. I'll be an NC with some common pals. I don't want any of them attempting to mediate. I'll take care of them later. Last night, I did not phone my son. Every night, I'd phone him. I'll tell him later tonight. He's not likely to be upset by the news. He didn't like her. Story 2. Emotional/physical affair. With very manly lesbian. I'm not sure where to begin, so I'll start at the beginning. In August of last year, my wife and I married. It was the most joyous day of our lives. In every sense, he's ideal for me. We never argued, never got irritated at each other. We had a terrific life, we were close, and I absolutely trusted her. Fast forward a year, she's in college, and I rarely ever see her. She was home most of the time, but locked away in the office concentrating on schoolwork, instructing us, myself and 2 sons, ages 10 and 13, not to disturb her, and we did. She informed me after school that the gap between us bothered her. This was something I felt as well, and we decided to work on it. I thought everything was back on track. Fast forward to 6 weeks ago. She had a taste for booze, but I always trusted her since she mainly hung out with her buddies. Then she got a new acquaintance, a girl called Alyssa. She was gal and very extremely boyish. Arms larger than mine, short hair. Looks like a guy straight up. I was instantly suspicious, and she replied they were just friends. But I know my wife is a secret, so I asked if she thought Alyssa was pretty. No, she responded, then somewhat when she's drunk. I let it go, believing that mistrust would only promote bad emotions. My wife claims she's going out for a few beers with a girlfriend and doesn't return home until 6 a.m. 4 weeks ago. I stayed up all night searching for her. I asked her girlfriend if she was with her, and she answered no, that she had gone home. When I questioned where my W was, she stated she was with that chick. When I confronted her about her deception, she said she was with Alyssa and assumed I would be furious. I was angry because she lied, not because she was with this girl. The next weekend, she asked if we could go out with the girl again, and I said sure. Then again 2 days later, while she was at work in the morning. I have a nasty feeling about it, and I trust my instincts. So I had a peek at her phone and saw some fairly flirtatious, sensual, filthy messages between them. I questioned her right afterwards, and she said they simply pecked each other a couple times and hugged in bed. I don't believe her since that's a lot of time for them to be together, and a lot of nasty messaging for some pecks and cuddling. Texts contained wishes for each other to undress and so forth. It turned out to be the start of a blossoming romance. My wife said that we were distant and that she was inebriated, which prompted her to do this. I lost it and told her I wanted to divorce. She cried and pleaded and swore she would never speak of her again and that she would get rid of her. I noticed a text message from my wife informing her that they needed to stop. I assumed it was a female, even though manly AF. I was trying to salvage this for my own feelings. I agreed to remain. I actually agreed to take some blame and started working on things right away, despite the fact that it really hurt and bugged me that she went out of our marriage to get these feelings. We went out the next weekend and got a room and had some drinks and had a great time. We went home and did the same thing, had an awesome time. I awoke Sunday morning to find her still asleep, and I checked her phone once again. When we went out, she began chatting to Alyssa again the second I fell asleep. She attempted to delete the evidence as well. The first time I caught her because I checked her text trash bin. This time when I looked, it was empty. But I looked at her contact history and found 28 messages between them while I was asleep. She had already returned to her after just 48 hours. I assumed I wouldn't say anything this time. I just asked her whether they chatted so she could give me the truth. She didn't, she lied. I'm due to close on a property for us 3 hours away in 2 weeks, and I have 2 sons from before we married. As previously said, this Alyssa lady is an extremely macho lesbian who plays male roles and is skilled in homewrecking. My wife wants to go to therapy, but I have a lot of grudges and I'm not sure whether it will help. I adore my wife, but when I think about this, I really detest her guts. I'm considering divorce. To be honest, I'm terrified of the pandemonium that will ensue. My wife is expected to start school in January, which is why I purchased this property 3 hours away. Neither my sons nor I have any motive to relocate. Everything was done for her. I'm not sure how to feel about it. She looks empathetic, but I'm not sure whether that's because she regrets it or if she's simply concerned about getting her SSS into school. If I cancel this home, she'll have to live with her mother again, and she won't be able to attend college. I feel stupid for still being concerned about her. She is definitely linked to this lady, and I am aware that I do not know the whole reality. What are your thoughts? I'm not sure what I'm searching for here. I have no one to speak to about it, and I'm at a loss for what to think/feel/do. The kids have no clue what is going on. The elder one is skeptical. I'm quite self-conscious about the fact that she cheated on me with another lady, particularly because she's incredibly and looks exactly like a male. I'm not anti, but as a typical old-school guy, this has eroded my masculinity, pride, and dignity. Basically, I'm feeling like especially after I've forgiven her, and she rushed straight back to her when I let down my guard.